you ever watched a film, read a book, or even played a video game that sparked a massive childhood obsession? If so, did this childhood obsession ever get you thinking non-stop about it? And most importantly, do you still get that same feeling of childlike wonder and joy when looking at it years later? Well, that was me and the 2007 Transformers film. This film has essentially been a core foundation of my childhood, and it is one of the few things that has gotten me obsessed with the sci-fi genre as a whole, as well as the Transformers series itself. But looking back on the film now, I honestly get a tidal wave of nostalgia wash over me. From its cinematography, to its CGI, its music, and yes, even its comedic moments. It just makes me think back to simpler times, you know? I have seen a lot of discourse surrounding the film online. Most of it is pretty mixed, but there is a general sense of nostalgia for this film, especially amongst my generation. And that is what we'll be discussing today, as well as my overall thoughts on the film. For my film reviews, I will use the following criteria. First, we'll look at the film's plot to see how well it tells a story. Then we'll look at the characters and the performances, and any technical aspects that I liked. As I am not a film student, I won't get into the nitty-gritty details of the film. What I do intend to do, however, is to give you a layman's term into a film, and what I typically enjoy and don't enjoy. So, without further ado, let's begin. To understand the film series as a whole, we must first go back to the 1980s, when the Transformers brand was born. Back then, Hasbro decided to produce a toy series centered on vehicles and pretending to robots. However, the concept was already being experimented on in Japan, with Takara producing toy lines such as Diaclone and Microchange. Hasbro, being fond of the concept, bought the licenses to these toy lines, and decided to partner with Takara to create the Transformers brand we know today. To say that the original Transformers series was big in the 1980s would be an understatement. From the original Generation 1 cartoon, to the Marvel UK and US comics, heck, even the Japanese Takara trilogy, which followed on from the original cartoon. Transformers was everywhere, and it was enjoying a massive high in terms of popularity. Eventually, however, it would fizzle out and eventually be relegated to the sidelines, at least until Beast Wars made a resurgence in the 1990s. This was then followed up with series such as Beast Machines, the 2001 version of Robots in Disguise, and even the Unicron trilogy. In the early 2000s, Don Murphy, a film producer, was considering making a G.I. Joe film. However, this idea ended up being scrapped when the US invaded Iraq in 2003. To compensate, Hasbro suggested to Murphy that he produce a film based on the Transformers series instead, and the rest is history. Hasbro convinced Michael Bay to direct the film, with a screenplay by Roberto Orci and Alex Kurtzman. Yes, the very same Kurtzman that wrote Star Trek Academy. It is also worth noting that the film was produced by Steven Spielberg himself, which makes it interesting to see that he was associated with these films in the first place. Now we come to the film's overall plot. Obviously there will be spoilers for those who haven't even seen this film. If you are concerned about spoilers, or haven't even watched the film, then I advise either skipping ahead slightly, or just stopping this video and going to watch the film. Otherwise, let's continue on. The plot of the film can be divided into 3 different arcs, that each converge into the film's climax. These arcs are presented to us from the perspectives of Captain Lennox, portrayed by Josh Duhamel, Maggie Madison, portrayed by Rachel Taylor, and our main protagonist, Shia LaBeouf, Sam Witwicky. Starting with Captain Lennox's plot, Lennox is a commander from a US military base in Qatar, which is attacked by the Decepticon Blackout. Following the attack, he leads a band of surviving soldiers to a nearby village to try and contact the Pentagon. At the same time, however, his squad is relentlessly pursued by Scorponok, Blackout's minicon partner. I really like this plotline a lot, because it portrayed the US military as the underdogs against the invading Decepticons, especially when it culminated in the band of soldiers trying to fight off Scorponok, whilst Lennox is trying to contact the Pentagon and contending with a very unhelpful call centre. According to Michael Bay, this scene was inspired by an actual account he had from a real soldier. The more you know. Maggie's plotline involves her trying to figure out why the Decepticons are causing havoc with the US military systems. When we first meet her, she is one of many data analysts who are briefed by Jon Voight's character on the situation before them. It's kind of funny to see Jon Voight was involved with this film, and yet I think it's actually one of his best roles in my opinion. After the Decepticon frenzy attacks Air Force One, Maggie tries to convince Jon Voight's character of the potential danger that was ahead of him. Jon Voight initially fails to see reason. As such, Maggie is forced to return to one of her friends, Glenn, who happens to be a genius hacker and also one of the funniest parts of the entire film. However, Glenn does play an important role in discovering that the files Blackout and Frenzy tried to download are related to Sector 7 and Captain Witwicky. More on that later. This then leads to the FBI finding out about Maggie stealing some important government data and arresting both her and Glenn in quite an intense yet hilarious scene. This is then followed by the infamous interrogation scene, where Glenn eats an entire hot plate of donuts and hilariously tries to incriminate Maggie in a sugar-induced rage. The final plotline revolves around Sam Witwicky. It basically involves him simply buying a car from Bernie Mac's character and trying to get with his crush Michaela Baines, who's portrayed by Megan Fox. All in all, it appears to be your typical coming-of-age story, but this is Transformers we're talking about. As Sam's plotline progresses, he eventually discovers that his car is an Autobot named Bumblebee, who was sent to act as his guardian. Sam begins to experience strange things around Bumblebee, from the Autobot destroying windows of the car dealership, to bugging out in front of Michaela, and even driving off in his own at night. Eventually Sam has enough and tries to get away, which leads to a run-in with the Decepticon Barricade, who tries to extract information from Sam about his own grandfather's glasses, which he found on Sam's eBay page. This then leads to Bumblebee saving Sam and Michaela from Barricade, who then introduces them to the rest of the Autobots: Optimus Prime, Ironhide, Ratchet, and Jazz. The Autobots also seek the glasses, as they contain the coordinates for the Allspark, the source of all life for the Autobots and Decepticons, and their main catalyst for war. When Optimus first arrives, he explains that during the war on Cybertron, the Allspark was jettisoned into space, where Megatron, the leader of the Decepticons, tracked it to Earth. Megatron crashed in the Arctic and was subsequently discovered by Sam's grandfather, who accidentally activates Megatron's navigation systems and gets blinded. This also imprinted the Allspark's coordinates on the glasses, somehow. Sam and Michaela end up having to return to Sam's house, where a pretty funny sequence unfolds as Sam tries to find the glasses, whilst trying to conceal Michaela and the Autobots from his parents. He eventually finds them, and he, along with Michaela and his parents, get arrested by Agent Seymour Simmons of Sector 7, who is portrayed by John Turturro. The three plot lines then converge when the Decepticons successfully reactivate Megatron and pursue the Allspark and the Autobots to Los Angeles, where they have a climatic battle with the Autobots and military forces. One thing I will say is that the stakes are incredibly high in this final battle, with the Autobots struggling to fight off the Decepticons and defend the humans. There is also a really emotional moment where Michaela almost breaks down over the thought of potentially losing Sam. The Autobots win when Sam uses the Allspark to kill Megatron, albeit at the cost of the Allspark and Jazz. And as the dust settles, the deceased Decepticons are just tossed into the ocean, Sector 7 is terminated, Sam and Michaela enter a relationship, and the Autobots decide to make Earth their new home. With regards to the film's characterization, I actually kind of enjoyed the human cast. Among my favourites would have to be Lennox and Epps, who was portrayed by Tyrese Gibson. They went through absolute hell trying to get back to American soil and fight off Scorponok at the same time. And I've really enjoyed their chemistry, which would be further cemented in the second and third films. And yes, I also ended up enjoying Sam Witwicky as the main protagonist. He's awkward, charismatic, and he's unafraid to step up and do what's necessary. Michaela also functions as a pretty good love interest for him, and while she is often played up for her sexuality, and I can't blame the filmmakers honestly, she does actually have some decent moments and even helps out with the final battle as well. Though if I had to pick one human character to be my absolute favourite, it would have to be Simmons. Maybe it's because of John Turturro's performance, but every time he was on screen, I found myself cracking a slight grin. But whilst the human characters were somewhat good, the main highlight for me, both as a kid and as an adult, has to be the Transformers themselves. The film focused on 5 Autobots and 8 Decepticons. For the Autobots, we had Optimus Prime, Jazz, Ironhide, Bumblebee, and Ratchet. Choosing to focus on 5 Autobots, in my opinion, is simple yet effective, as it allowed us to get somewhat attached to them. It also allowed them to display their own unique personalities. And speaking of Optimus Prime, we were blessed to have the original Generation 1 voiceover artist Peter Cullen reprise his role in such a spectacular fashion. This is also the only film in the Transformers series to not portray Optimus as a psycho, as many fans would label it one. And yes, I am completely aware of this. And yes, as the films do go on, I kind of see where people are coming from, but at the same time, I don't think this incarnation of Optimus was as psychotic as many people think. In fact, I would often go out of my way to defend him. There is a great video by Transformers YouTuber J-Man who defends this incarnation of Optimus, and I'm honestly inclined to agree with him on a lot of points brought up here. I'll leave a link to the video for you all to have a look at. As for the Decepticons in the series, we were given Megatron, Starscream, Bonecrusher, Brawl, Blackout, Barricade, Frenzy and Scorponok. The cons in this film are, in my opinion, the most threatening incarnations of the faction to date. I think the only times they actually even come close to being this threatening are when they were under Starscream's leadership in Transformers Prime and in the third Transformers film. As for what makes them threatening in themselves, I narrowed it down to 3 key factors: overall mystery surrounding their actions, their tendency to steal the scene whenever they appear, and their gradual build-up to the film's climax. Granted, whilst we do find out the reason why they're doing what they're doing, the mystery behind it makes it somewhat more satisfying and even more mysterious as well. The main standout Decepticons, in my opinion, would have to be Megatron, Blackout, and Barricade. In the case of Megatron, this has to be one of my favourite incarnations of the character. From the amazing performance of Hugo Weaving, to his jagged and almost savage design, there are a lot of positives I have to say about this incarnation. I also like how he's built up as this big threat, and boy how he did they deliver on it. The way he made his appearance in the final battle, and the carnage he inflicted upon the battlefield still gets to me. I also know he was a lot more brutal and violent in the supplemental material for this film, where he eats sparks of literal Cybertronians like jazz. Scorponok was surprisingly the second most threatening Decepticon in the film, primarily due to his predator-like nature in following Lennox and his soldiers through the desert in Qatar. Frenzy was crazy and unhinged, and he was honestly one of the most terrifying aspects of the film when I was a child. At least for me. I believe this was mainly due to his unpredictable nature, his sound design, and his overall silhouette. Now I'm just simply amazed by Frenzy and his overall design. They even made a life-size practical prop of him, which is pretty astounding for how far they were willing to bring the Transformers to life. As for the other Decepticons, they feel the niche pretty well, and they do steal the scene whenever they are present. Barricade and Blackout in particular are the most important out of all of them, as they not only introduce the characters, and by extension us, to them, but they are also pivotal in setting off some of the most important events of the film. In Blackout's case, the destruction of the Qatar base is regarded as one of the best moments in Transformers history. Also really loved the design of the film itself. From the CGI and some blended with practical effects to the camera angles and cinematography, this film feels alive and realistic, and is especially much more superior compared to modern films like Pacific Rim Uprising or Black Widow. The Transformers themselves are incredibly well designed and fit the universe of the film perfectly. I have seen people complain about how far removed they are from their Generation 1 designs, but I think that's the whole point. While the Gen 1 designs are iconic and timeless, most of them wouldn't exactly work in this universe. Even though recent films like Bumblebee and to an extent Rise of the Beasts have shown that the Generation 1 designs could work in live action, the overall tone of the Bayformers films wouldn't exactly allow for the popular designs to fit in. That said, I do have some complaints about the designs. This is mainly in the form of Starscream's design. Whilst I can't exactly complain how well animated it is, or how well proportioned his limbs are, and his unique digitigrade legs, my main issue would have to be the torso. I mean, the torso looks a bit like a Dorito chip, and it is incredibly wide and just doesn't really fit right with me. I mean, if he had a torso design similar to his Transformers Prime design, with a little bit of his Gen 1 counterpart mixed in, it would have been perfect. I think another complaint I do have would be Optimus himself. I love his overall silhouette and his head design, but I would personally change the colour slightly to match his Generation 1 design. With regards to the music and sound design, it is just honestly perfect. From Steve Jablonsky's score, which fits every single scene perfectly like a glove, to the overall soundtrack behind the film, it is just honestly a spectacle. And most of the scenes wouldn't exactly be what they were without the incredible sound design put behind it. From Frenzy's downright terrifying and skittish noises to Bumblebee's genius usage of sound samples to try and speak, it honestly just elevates it to an unforgettable experience in my eyes. I also really love the performance of most of the cast. Main standouts will be Josh Duhamel, Shia LaBeouf, Megan Fox, Tyler Anderson, and of course John Turturro. And also, I can't even forget to mention the voice acting behind the Transformers themselves. Peter Cullen's voice role as Optimus is nothing short of iconic. But what he did here in the live-action films just elevated it to a legendary status. Other standouts would have to be Hugo Weaving's Megatron, Charlie Adler's Starscream, and Jess Harnell's Bumblebee Einheit. For all its flaws, I just genuinely love this film. There's just something about it and its subsequent sequels that really get to me. Maybe it's just how well they've aged compared to modern films nowadays, or just how nostalgic they make me feel. But this film in particular just really makes me yearn for simpler times. Times when we just actually cared about the entertainment we were curating and consuming. And a time we didn't even have to worry about what was going on in the news. I will be covering the other Transformers films, so hang tight on that. And as for the second film, let's just say it's a guilty pleasure of mine, flawed as it is.